Howdy, folks. Witch Walls from NeedCoffee.com here, sitting on a hairbrush. Back again for another Wayhomer review. I've just seen a film at the cinema. That's a cinema back that way. We're facing the right direction for once. Let me take this from you there. Thank you. Yes, we're back again for another Wayhomer review, and here's how it works. I've just left the cinema where I've seen that film, and I'm going to tell you about that film on my way home. And there I am. And today we're here to talk about the Bourne legacy. Okay, so, synopsis. What do you do, friends? What do you do when basically the star of your franchise has said that he's not going to, and this is the last story that I had heard, maybe it's changed, but that he's not going to come back unless you can get the previous director to come back, and you can't get the previous director to come back, so he's not coming back. So what do you do? Well, the good news is that you've basically set up the Bourne-verse, or whatever it's called, so you've got this kind of playground that you can screw around in. And so you basically just say, oh, well, you think that was something, you ain't seen nothing yet, and basically turn everything up to 11. So your synopsis is this. Synopsis is that basically you've got the Treadstone project that brought you Bourne and everything else was just the tip of the iceberg. Everything's turned up to 11, and all these other projects have been going on as well, because, you know, it's the government, and that's what they do. So, one of the people who is in this other project, this side project, is the Jeremy Renner character, who is basically, as you've already seen in the trailer, so I'm not giving anything away, a mildly enhanced badass, okay? However, it's starting to leak out that what's going on, and so some people aren't exactly happy at the way all these programs have been going, and so somebody starts to clean house, which is fine unless you're, how to best put this, unless you're one of the things that needs to be cleaned up, then you're probably not too happy about it, especially when you're mildly enhanced and a badass. So, hijinks thus ensue. So really, if you think about it, this is what they've done is they've pulled a Lost World. They've gone, there was another island. So, now, they executed it a lot better than the Lost World did. Because at least this makes a lot more sense than, oh, who knows how many islands there are. There's a lot of islands in the world. This one is actually a bit more organic, and it actually feels like, I mean, it's obvious that they're trying to, like, refresh the franchise with a new star, okay? But it feels less desperate than the Lost World. I think that's the best way to put it. So, I mean, so there's your synopsis. You got a brand new protagonist, born somewhere off in the Etric somewhere, and you've got things. So, okay. Part of the thing about this film is that, you know, when Rob mentioned on Weekend Justice, it takes a long time to get started. And it really does. And it's very intriguing, but it just, when the film decides that it wants to move, it really moves. However, it needed to move a little bit more, you know what I mean? Because there's just long periods of where there's a lot of, I don't know, intrigue with lots of capital I's. And it's not that I expect this to be The Expendables 2, which I saw yesterday, where things just blow up every 5 seconds. But, I mean, it just felt like it needed a bit more of a pulse, you know what I mean? Now, that can be fine. And that's all well and good, and it looked like it was starting to go someplace. But then, you know, it didn't really bother me. And I don't want to spoil anything. So your first act is slow. Your second act appears to have taken a page from a beloved piece of literature that was then turned into a film. I'm not going to say anything else. When you see the movie, I think you'll catch on to what I'm talking about. But I will tell you this, and I'm trying not to spoil anything. But basically there comes a point at which you have enhanced soldiers fighting with non-enhanced people stuck in the middle. There comes a point where you're just remaking Terminator 2, okay? And if you're not careful, that's what happens. And especially if you're not moving a lot to take our minds off the fact that you're remaking Terminator 2, okay? And especially when you start to think, man, I enjoyed Terminator 2 better than this. So it just sort of just starts rolling and keeps rolling, you know what I mean? So, now, all of that to say, there's some very good stuff in here. Like I said, when it starts to move, it does move, and moves well. I did have a bit of a problem with something that the Bourne franchise, for the most part, has avoided, which is, if you're going to have fight sequences, I'd like to see them, okay? I would like you to back up with the camera just a wee bit so I can actually see what all the fight choreographers spent so much time with the actors teaching them to do. But there's a lot of cuts in here where I'm just like, whose fist was that? And that really bothers me. Because like I said, a lot of work went into those sequences, so let's watch them, shall we? I mean, I thought we were watching a movie. And I thought that's what we came to see. So, so there's that. But, I mean, Jeremy Renner, he's good. I like him. He's just one of these actors that I think I just like, right? And the rest of the cast are fine. Your bad guys spend a lot of time in a dark room looking at screens, which isn't very exciting. I mean, you can pull that off if you're like a Bond villain, but these people aren't Bond villains. You know what I mean? So that was a bit lacking. But beyond that, I mean, the only thing that it did wrong was it borrowed from some really great films, but I didn't feel as entertained. But basically, when you're borrowing from films, the risk is that when you call back to those films, if you're not careful, if you're not at least as good as that film or moving or as entertaining, I might wish I was watching that film instead. And sometimes that's what was happening, and I was kind of fine with it till the final act of the film, and then I thought, okay, this is starting to get a little bit ridiculous. So yeah, but it's not the fault of the cast, and really it's the limitation of what they were trying to do, because when you start playing around in that playground, people have been there before you, okay? And I'm trying, if that sounds a little vague and weird, it's because I'm trying not to spoil anything, okay? So yes, but I mean, there were bits of it I enjoyed, but I would have enjoyed it a lot more if it had been probably shorter. And it felt even longer than it actually was, which is never a good sign for a film in which people are shooting other people. So, from a cup standpoint, I mean, it was going right down the middle for the most part until we got to the sequence in which I was, just waiting for Edward Furlong to show up. I mean, I at that point, I was just like, okay, this is, oh, God. And then just when I thought, am I being a little too hard on it? Then they really, really did it. You know what I mean? Where you just go, maybe it's just me. And then you see something and you go, no, that's not me. And when you see the film, I think you'll know what I'm talking about. And again, I'm sorry, I know that sounds weird, but if you do see the film, I don't want to screw anything up for you, okay? So that's why I'm being vague and weird and talking in circular ways. So that dropped it down to about a 2 out of 5. I'm afraid so. I mean, it's a good effort. They get a huge E for effort for trying to revitalize the franchise, but I almost feel like they painted themselves into a corner, especially the further we got into the film. Definitely, if you haven't already seen it, because I know we're on the second weekend here, if you haven't already seen it, you're fine with a rental. I would say even if you're a fan of the franchise, you're probably fine with a rental. So save yourself some coin, because it'll be out, what is it, almost September? It'll probably be hitting by Christmas. In a 4-title pack from Universal. So, yeah, that about does it. But it's one of those things where hopefully what you can hope for is that now that they've reset everything, that maybe when they do come back, because they will, they'll be able to take it in a new and more interesting and fresh direction. So there you go. As always, thanks so much for watching these things. I hope you do enjoy them and find them at least mildly entertaining. Mildly enhanced movie reviews with stuff that moves around me. So as always, if you enjoy these, please share them on Facebook, on Twitter, on the social medium of your choice, because that does help us out quite a bit. And yes. So, we will see you next time on the Wayhomer Reviews. Might be able to get one more in before the weekend's over. We'll find out. Bye.